Hello, and welcome to In Depth with TommieMedia. I'm Emily Haugen. According to St. Thomas President Julie Sullivan, the Twin Cities are located at an epicenter of a national movement for racial change. The university launched the Racial Justice Initiative in July, naming former College of Arts and Sciences Dean Yohuru Williams its founding director. This initiative began after George Floyd, a black man, died after a white Minneapolis police officer kneeled on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. Hennepin County charged former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin with unintentional second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. Today, Dr. Williams joins us to discuss the Racial Justice Initiative's mission and the climate at St. Thomas. Dr. Williams, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Emily.
So, with St. Thomas being right in the center of the Twin Cities, a location Julie Sullivan wrote was the epicenter for national change, what makes it important to start up something like the Racial Justice Initiative at St. Thomas?
It's a great question, and it's threefold. I think first and foremost, as a Catholic institution informed by Catholic social teaching, this is part of the responsibility we bear as an institution to be responsive to things that are happening in the community. And it's not just Catholic social teaching that informs it, it's also the mission of the university. So when we think about our core values, this is something that we should all be concerned about, thinking about how we can leverage our talents and expertise in a way that aids the community that is in need of healing. Secondly, as President Sullivan indicated, we are at the epicenter of a national, in fact, a global conversation about racial justice. And not to respond in and of itself would be really an act of abandonment for this community, which has given so much to us and which we benefit so much from. Last but not least is simply our desire to really be fully functioning and authentic partners in this community. It's part of everyone's responsibility. And this is very important for students to understand once you graduate and you move to a particular place, to invest in that place. And you demonstrate that investment by showing up when that community has real needs and in being an authentic partner and thinking about what you can contribute. It's not a set thing always. It's always a question of what are your gifts that you have and your talents, and in thinking about bending those in a way that actually serves the needs of the community you live in.
That's super valuable. As the founding director of the Racial Justice Initiative, you said that you plan to find places on campus where people are already doing work and create spaces for them to channel it. How has that mission played out so far?
Well, so far, we're still a work in progress, but it's played out, I think, in some substantive ways based on some exciting things that were already happening at the university. In the College of Arts and Sciences, they had the SOLVE initiative, for example. And some of the work that some of the faculty were doing there, Brett Brunick's in particular, with the Mindful Movement Program and the YWCA is a good example. And that's simply asking a question, again, what do communities of color need in terms of addressing not just the questions associated with police brutality? That's one manifestation of what is a much deeper systemic issue of systemic racism and racial oppression. And that's healthy bodies. So the work that Health and Human Performance has done, exercise science has done, with the YWCA is a good example of that. In terms of the Racial Justice Initiative, our work is also focused on recognizing other organizations on campus that do similar work. So the Center for the Common Good is amazing. Think about Teresa Ricky Keeley and the work her organization does. Our DEI ambassadors, the entire School of Education run by Dean Kathleen Campbell, the Morrison College of Health and the things that are going to be happening with Michael Hang. So a lot of things that we're doing is in partnership with other synergies and in thinking about how Racial Justice Initiative can help anchor that work, break down silos, and be a convener to bring different stakeholders to the table to talk through how we can work collectively to have an impact.
I'm excited to see what comes from those partnerships. So this is the first academic year since 2016 that St. Thomas hasn't had a publicly reported racial incident on campus. After the last incident at Ireland Hall in September 2019, the community gathered at a be-in to reclaim the space and call for change. How has the St. Thomas community changed since that campus-wide call?
It's such a great question, Emily, and I think it's a question that we all have to reflect on. The question is, have we not seen an incident this year because we're sheltering in place because of COVID-19, because less people are on campus, or have we really changed as a community? I would hope given the spring, what we saw nationally in terms of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and certainly George Floyd, that our communities experienced some growth as well. And while we can take stock of the fact that we all have work to do as a community, it's encouraging to think that this semester, despite the election, despite everything that happened this spring, we did not have an incident on campus. No community, no organization, no institution is immune from the reach of racial prejudice. What we can hope to do if we're successful, and the best that we can hope for, is that we put devices and interventions in place that communicate our larger values, and we try to live those values. And I think what President Sullivan did very effectively following the incident in Ireland Hall last year was to put those interventions in place so that people understand this is not a community where that type of behavior is condoned. But we all have to demonstrate that and live that every day in the way that we show up as partners in this community, as classmates, as friends, as colleagues, as associates, as Tommies.
So during your time at St. Thomas, you've served as the Dean of College of Arts and Sciences, and you kind of talked about some of the initiatives you've organized, like Teach-In Tuesdays and the Solve Community Engagement. How did those experiences fit into your future plans for this initiative?
Another great question. I think, when you're dean of the largest college, it's hard sometimes because you think about, 37 academic departments and programs, trying to leverage that expertise in a way and to get people to think about taking on issues of racial justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it's not your primary responsibility. Your primary responsibility is to make sure that the college is running efficiently. It's nice to transition into this role where the bulk of my attention, all of my attention is focused on that area. But at the same time, there are some exciting things that we did within the college that I think are carrying over into this work and allowing us to be much more mindful about the ways that we can then take that and work with community partners like Interfaith Action, like the YWCA. I had a great meeting yesterday with a wonderful youth intervention program in Minneapolis that's looking at taking gang members and trying to find opportunities for these former gang members to not only get an education, but think about ways that they can also serve their community. And those are all really exciting initiatives. Again, I think that we're uniquely positioned, as President Sullivan talked about, because of our mission to make a difference. But it also is going to require us to think differently about who we are and to do the hard work internally to make sure that we're ready for that challenge and that we can show up as authentic partners and again, invest in these communities in the way that they deserve our investment and our interest and our attention, not as saviors, but as partners.
Mm-hmm. So in all of your work so far, where do you see the greatest need for change at St. Thomas?
Well, I think the greatest work to be done institutionally is also the same work that we need to do as individuals. We can talk about a number of things in terms of this institution that are challenges for institutions all over the country. Certainly like to see a much more diverse student body. You'd like to see a much more diverse faculty and administrators. At the same time, if you look at the administration and some of the things that President Sullivan and Provost Plum have done to increase diversity, they're impressive. We have a long way to go. If we think about changes in our student body, they're also impressive, but we still have a long way to go. I celebrate interventions like Doherty Family College, which is a good example of our commitment to diversity and also thinking about students who may have challenges and how we help those students overcome those obstacles so they can actually be successful at the University of St. Thomas. But for me, the biggest challenge right now is retention. And Tanya Jones-Peterson, who's one of our awesome administrators, works on this in terms of what we think about what we need to do in order to make sure that the students who do come here feel comfortable, that they feel like they're fully welcomed in this community, and that we're doing everything necessary to make sure that they're not only academically successful, but they also have quality experiences which really communicate to them that we value them, their experience, and we want to make sure as much as possible they feel fully integrated in the part of our community. So that remains, I think it's also true for faculty, it's also true for administrators. It's one thing to say that for any institution to say that it values diversity. It's another thing to start to make the substantive changes necessary to make sure that you're creating an environment where people see that, they recognize it, and they feel comfortable.
I'm excited to see what this initiative does in the coming years. So Dr. Williams, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Emily. Appreciate it. Always nice to be with TommieMedia.
So if there's a topic you'd like covered on In Depth, tweet us at TommieMedia. With Dr. Yohuru Williams, I'm Emily Haugen. We'll see you next time we go in depth on TommieMedia.